Turns out that today the restaurant industry is 74% by foot traffic off premises, which is to say that the restaurant industry right now is 3/4 about people grabbing food to eat at home rather than eating together with people from outside of their home. And I can't help but see this and connect it to the fact that Americans seem to be dating less than ever and coupling less than ever, getting married later in their lives, having fewer children. You can almost think about this as like a total life scale effect, where teenagers, by record, have fewer friends and spend less time hanging out. 20-somethings are dating less, 30-somethings are marrying less, and 40-somethings have fewer kids. Those are the social costs of the antisocial century. It's a world where people who might be biochemically tricked to not listen to the voice of loneliness, the biological urge to be with people, demanding too much aloneness for themselves. So much aloneness that it's actually bad for them. And the costs of this at an emotional and psychological level are obvious. Rates of anxiety are going through the roof. Rates of social anxiety are going through the roof. Young people have never been more depressed or never said they had fewer friends. We're doing this to ourselves, and we don't have to.
We have become lonelier, we've become more isolated. And this is not just an American phenomenon, by the way. This is a broader feature of modernity that the UK, Australia, Japan, and many other countries are experiencing as well. And it doesn't mean that we should go back to 1920 or 1930 or 1950. But what it does mean is that we have to recognize that if we don't consciously make rebuilding connection a priority in our individual lives and in society more broadly, if we don't do that through individual actions and the building of social infrastructure in our communities, then we will continue to see an erosion of our relationships, and we'll see not only the health consequences of loneliness, which are profound, mental and physical, but also the economic and the national security implications of loneliness, which make us more prone to division and to polarization.
There is no male loneliness epidemic. It is a loser epidemic. Men would rather be alone than to evolve and change, than to recognize, wait, maybe I had it wrong. Maybe there's something I need to change. If you can't get a woman because none of them want to be with you, maybe try and figure out why. Instead of making women the problem and saying that their standards are too high, maybe try and figure out why they don't want to be with you. What is it about you that maybe needs to change in order for a woman to want you? And they'll say, oh, there's no more good women left. Women are not like what they used to be. Women used to spend their days in the kitchen. Women only cared about taking care of the house and the kids. Oh yeah, and also women used to take our beatings. Women used to stay quiet. Women didn't complain. Women didn't think they could get better. Women didn't have confidence and self-worth and weren't able to speak up for themselves. And that suited you. That's the kind of person you wanted. If you love your mum's generation so much, cool, maybe marry one of her single friends. Women are not the problem. They have just woken up and realized they deserve better, that they don't actually need anything from these men, and they're only going to accept a man in their life if the man can make their life better. And if you cannot do that, you will not be chosen. If you can't level up and be the kind of man that women of this day and age want, you won't get to have a woman in this day and age. Your tricks are not working anymore. The internalized misogyny, the oppression, all of that is not working anymore. Women are waking up from it. Women are healing. Women are learning to love themselves and their own company. Women are learning to support and love each other and have communities and have friendships that are valuable and fulfilling. We now know that getting married and having children is a choice, that you don't have to do that is not what makes you successful or fulfilled in life. In fact, having kids when you haven't healed yourself and you don't know your own worth is actually the problem. It's why so many, if not all of us, have childhood traumas, have issues. What's happening right now is very normal. It's called evolution. It's happened many times before. When conditions change in the world, you either evolve to survive or you get left behind. This is evolution. Instead of complaining about it, evolve.
I'm really curious if anyone else in LA feels like you have a social life, you have friends, but you really just feel so lonely, like all the time. There's always so much going on. You have people to talk to, you have people to hang out with, but at the end of the night, you come home and you're like, did any of those people actually really care to get to know me, like for who I am? Do I actually really even know any of them? Luckily, over time, I've made amazing friends here, but making friends here has not been the same as making friends in Seattle where I grew up. There's things about LA that I love so much more than my hometown. down. There's something about this place that just makes me constantly question what is real and what is not. I don't know how else to describe it other than being on a movie set 24/7 and you don't know when the cameras are rolling and people are in character or when they're not. I think in order to be really happy living here, you just gotta find the real ones. Like, you have to find the right people, and it's not always easy.
There are an increasingly large number of women who are just choosing not to get married and are choosing to stay single. Women are increasingly choosing to opt out of long-term mating if they're not able to find the relationship that they want.
I don't think people realize just how big of a deal it is that we are currently experiencing these phenomenons of women choosing singlehood and the male loneliness epidemic and how those interrelate and the impact that has and what that means for society right now. We are going through radical change globally. I think we also forget just how new it is for women to be able to do the things that we're able to do today. In many, many countries, it was only around 1980, even to the 2000s, that women were able to start working without their husband's permission, get a credit card without their husband's permission. That was like 40 years ago, 45 years ago. Women had to get married, had to have a male partner to survive in this world. And without going through all the details of everything that happened in between, right now, we're finally at a stage where women have the rights and also the confidence to say, actually, this relationship isn't serving me. I'd rather be single. We have the capability to do that now. We can work and, get on in this world by ourselves now. And also, we have laws in place now where women are probably safer to do that, to make that decision, to be on their own. We've also done a lot of work in kind of like terminology and psychology and naming behaviors for what they are, and we're better able to articulate and identify behavior that doesn't serve us. And this kind of interrelates with social media too, because especially like TikTok, we've kind of had the ability to learn so much from each other. And, people are telling their stories. Maybe these women are talking and venting about their relationships and what they're experiencing. And then all of these other women are like, oh my God, this is what I feel. I can't believe it. I thought I was going crazy. We've just made a lot of shifts, and we're kind of realizing as a collective, okay, so this behavior actually isn't okay, and this isn't serving me, and I should probably leave this relationship. And I am vowing to myself that I will not enter another relationship in which this occurs. In summary, women are choosing themselves, choosing to be single, and no longer accepting crappy behavior. And in turn, this male loneliness epidemic is playing out. I've done a lot of research on this, but no one really seems to point out the issue straight up. To me, personally, and from all the research I've done up until now, what I understand is when they say male loneliness epidemic, they are just talking about their void of a woman in their life, a relationship. Because to me, I don't understand how it is not so simple. Go hang out with the mate next door who also says he's lonely. If so many men are lonely, why don't you all do something together? From what I understand, their loneliness doesn't include everything. It's not a loneliness in a sense of like friendships or pets or community, work. It's only a sense of there's no woman in their life in a romantic sense. So personally, I think it's just a romantic loneliness, I guess, of like one is longing for a romantic partner. And that is what encompasses the male loneliness epidemic. I think men have to do a lot of emotional healing and inner work right now, because where women kind of were able to do that for them, in return gave a woman financial stability, Women are able to be financially stable themselves now, but it seems like men haven't caught up in that emotional area of life yet. I think this is going to be a really huge wake-up call for men, in a sense of, okay, they're kind of forced to do something now because we're no longer putting up with it. Women are doing really well single, and we see this in all of the research. Women live longer lives, healthier lives when they're single. And it's the opposite for men. They live healthier, longer lives in marriage. And I'm really interested to see how this plays out over the years to come. I think women are kind of really happy where we're at right now, and we're not really budging unless men make some radical change.
A man of average attractiveness has to swipe right 200 times to get one coffee. And then, 4 of those 5 coffees will ghost him.
The male loneliness epidemic discussion is hilarious, honestly, because if there are a bunch of lonely men out there romantically, that means there are a bunch of romantically lonely women out there too.
Her video is extremely long, so I'm going to have to go point by point to go and emphasize why I think this whole entire video was absolutely wrong. For those who don't know, Professor Scott Galloway is going viral right now because he made a video talking about the male loneliness epidemic. This girl made a 10-minute video trying to debunk everything he said, and I have a lot of problems with it. And let's start with point number 1.
A man of average attractiveness is not putting nearly as much effort into his appearance as a woman of quote-unquote average attractiveness. A man of average attractiveness does not have a skincare routine, does not have a hair care routine, washes everything with a 3-in-1 body wash, or better yet, some like Dawn soap that he has stashed in his moldy-ass bathroom.
First point is the fact that he says average male attractiveness. He's basically trying to say that the average male doesn't put enough effort into his appearance, and that's really not their fault. And as somebody who does his eyebrows, gets spray tans, wears colored contacts, got his teeth whitened, got Invisalign, I can assure you one of the main comments I get is that that's feminine. The reality is there's just not that many things besides getting in good shape, maybe wearing some nice clothes, maybe putting on some cologne, getting your hair cut, that a man could do to maintain the masculinity frame that you want him to maintain, but also be trying on his appearance. Because no matter what this average looking man is, he will never be able to compete with a girl who is average looking and is allowed to go and cake herself in makeup, get her hair done, you go add extensions, go and do a bunch of things that a man can't do. Like, what else do you expect him to do? Because girls will say stuff like this, but then if you actually go and do it, they will make fun of you for being feminine. But at the end of the day, I still think it works. Let's get to her next point.
And then, 4 of those 5 coffees will ghost him.
So I've been well-spoken and everything, can't help but to give himself away as well as the exact type of incel that he's talking about. Because how are you going to say an average man has to swipe 200 times just to get a coffee? First of all, it's not a coffee, it's a date with a woman, a human being, okay? So you thinking of it in these terms like, oh, it's a coffee and you swipe right 200 times, like you're just as statistical and calculated as these other men. Not to mention, they lower their own chances of matching with somebody because they're swiping right on everybody. And then the women who actually do the emotional labor of like reading people's profiles and like making sure that they have like matching interests and stuff like that, go and do that, and they're like, why the fuck would this guy match me? We have nothing in common. He wants kids and I don't, etc.
Next point seems to be an issue with the fact that Professor Scott Galloway refers to going on a date as getting a coffee, and she says this is like dehumanizing women by referring to it as just a coffee. They're actually women. I think it's pretty common sense that he was just using this as a hyperbole to better explain the fact that an average man has to swipe 200 times to go in a simple date with a girl. She tries to say, well, that's because men just swipe on anybody while a girl will sit there and they'll analyze the profile and do this or that. I don't believe for 2 seconds that a girl goes through a whole entire man's profile before swiping. While I do agree that men probably swipe right more than women, I disagree with the fact that I think women are sitting there looking at the university that he graduated from and being like, actually, no, I don't think we're a good match. Then she starts to raise an issue with the fact that a coffee date is, of course, not good enough for this woman.
Coffee is not a date. So like these men's problem might just be they're asking women out for coffee. So if you're asking out another dude, that's perfectly fine. A coffee date will suffice because both you and that dude are likely just going to roll off the couch, like grab your car keys and head out to the date, okay? But the way that you're going to expect a woman to show up to a coffee date, even if you pay for her coffee, it's a negative investment to her. So something that is a low investment strategy for men, you're asking actually more in return from the woman time-wise. Even just the time that it takes a woman to get ready, even just for a coffee date, is going to be longer. Depending on how you value your time, it's like, no, I'm not going to spend like an hour or even 30 minutes or even 15 minutes getting ready for a coffee date where the amount of product I'm going to use is more expensive than the quote-unquote coffee he's treating me to. It's just insulting. Like,
This is the same girl that literally 5 seconds ago just said, listen, this is not a coffee date. This is a date with a human woman. If you're going on a date and your goal is to actually get to know somebody, it shouldn't matter if the date is a dinner date, a coffee date, on top of the Empire State Building. The point is your goal is to try and get to know this person. And the part that angered me the most is the fact that she really sits there and says that it's the least that a man could do is go and take her on a dinner date because they're putting their lives at risk because they could potentially be murdered by the person they're going on a date with.
You're asking women out on a coffee date. How is that supposed to let them know that you value them? Like, what does that tell them about their value? you're only willing to like pay $7, and a woman has to spend like hours getting ready and like meeting you and potentially putting her life in danger, putting her reproductive system in danger. She's supposed to do all that just because she shouldn't want you to feel unvalued or rejected when all that you value her as is $7.
While obviously there is more potential risk for a woman to be assaulted than a man on a date with a stranger, I think it's a ridiculous argument that you're going to sit there and say, yeah, it's not worth my time to go and risk my life for a coffee date, but if you paid $70 more, yeah, I'll risk getting murdered. If you are that scared to go on a date because you think you're potentially going to be murdered, I would recommend not going on dates. It is a poor excuse for the fact that these girls' ego get a little hurt when a guy asks them on a coffee date because they think the monetary value of the date determines how we view them. And in reality, I think going on coffee dates is actually safer than going on a dinner date because number one, they're typically during the day. They give you a valid excuse that you can leave instead of you being trapped on a dinner date. And there's no expectation that technically you're supposed to be doing something after the date. At one point, she starts naming the fact that economically she would be losing money for the amount of time that it takes her to get ready, the makeup she would put on. That's not even worth, even if the guy pays for the coffee, that's not even worth, she's technically losing money. Do you see how for her, suddenly she understands the point of why a guy might not want to go on a dinner date? Because he can sit there, go on a dinner date, this girl could be a terrible person, he can waste his money and his time, and the girl loses nothing. And that bothers you that you could potentially, lose out on $3 of makeup and maybe 40 minutes, and that's too much of an investment for you to lose? It's quite ironic, and it shows how they contradict themselves, how they make it seem like they can't empathize with the fact that a guy's a little nervous of spending hundreds of dollars on the first date. But look how scared she gets over the thought of going on a coffee date and the little investment that it took her to get ready, spend money on makeup, and go and do things because she might lose money on the $8 coffee that he's going to buy her. This girl is a perfect example of why I believe the statistic for young men wanting to be single is happening. Because I think a lot of men are coming to the realization that a lot of women wouldn't do half of the things that a man is willing to do for her. This girl literally couldn't even fathom the idea of getting ready to go and get to know you on a coffee date because it might lose her, $5 to $6. It's completely normal for a guy to be investing the same thing with the exact same risk, besides the fact that, yes, statistically it is less likely that he gets murdered on the date. This woman really goes on to say that the reason why women can't settle below their standards, and by their standards a lot of it is superficial stuff, is because of the very real risk that men could just wake up one day and murder them.
A benefit to your life. At the very least, she is extremely unlikely to ever unalive or injure, actually threaten your well-being in any way as a man. As for women, not only are they expected to settle below the bare minimum, they're also expected to be okay with the very real risk and fear that your husband may one day just lose his shit and unalive you and hide your body in the fucking backyard again. Or the fact that the number one risk of unaliving for pregnant women is unaliving at the hands of their partner. So women are supposed
The reality is, while most men obviously commit higher rates of violent crime than women, to sit there and say that most men, out of the US population, are likely to murder their wives, that's not a thing. It's like me saying, listen, we should get all the benefits because there is a statistically higher chance that women kill their babies at a higher rate than men. Yes, they obviously do it at a higher rate statistically than men, but to sit there and think that most women are doing that would be a crazy thing to say. My personal opinion, just such a lazy and obviously misinformed excuse for girls to come up with for why there's obviously an unbalanced dynamic between men and women in dating. Because you could literally say that about anything statistically that has a high crime rate. You could use that against race too. Statistically, this race commits a higher rate of domestic assault, so they should be doing more because there's this big risk.
Not to mention, they expect most women to be a complete corn star in bed or learn or be willing to have sexual acts performed on you that don't bring you pleasure as a favor to that man, and will expect you to stay in really good shape throughout your marriage. Otherwise they'll complain that you let yourself go and got fat, even if those are the very common side effects of having given birth. Our bodies as women sometimes change after giving birth. Men don't care about that. They expect that from you.
I was editing this video and I forgot to mention this part of the video. I don't know what absolute villains this woman is dating. That is not a common experience that is happening for most men. Most men are not expecting their wife to be a corn star in bed. And if you are dating a man that is so obviously selfish and they're making you do all these things, why are you wanting to marry them in the first place? And what immature baby child are you marrying that would see their wife gain weight after they got pregnant and be like, oh, dude, she's really losing herself? But yes, I do think it's a little bit selfish if you sit there and you don't eat healthy, you don't go to the gym, and you just expect your partner's supposed to be attracted to you the whole time. That's male or female oriented. But anyways, back to my video. Our video still has another 7 minutes to the points that I've already made. So if you want to go watch the whole thing, go take a look. But this was one of the most coping examples of why a lot of men can't even discuss the problems that we have. Because our main 3 points all revolve around the fact of just misrepresenting data. If you're nervous and think that you can't go on a coffee date because of the off chance that a guy is going to murder you, and you're more willing to go on that date because he invited you to Houston's instead of Starbucks, you probably shouldn't be going on the date. If you think the person that you chose to marry has a slight chance that he freaks out one day and murders you, you suck at picking a husband. And if you think an average girl who's able to go and put on a bunch of makeup, hair extensions, eyeliner, go and wear nice heels and do all those things is the equivalent to what an average man is able to do without being made fun of, you're in a different world. Because I can assure you there's probably a lot of male-oriented reasons for why the male loneliness epidemic is starting, but I can assure you every point